Let me ask you a question that might make you a little bit angry. Why is it that you can stand on the bank or sit in your boat for 10 straight hours, focused, perfectly executing every technique you know, and catch absolutely nothing, but the exact moment you get disgusted, drop your shoulders, curse under your breath, and decide to go home, your rod nearly gets ripped out of your hands by the biggest fish of the season? It makes zero sense, right? It feels like the fish are mocking you. It feels like the universe is playing a sick joke. Well, I am here to tell you that it is not a joke. It is not magic. And it is certainly not a coincidence. Today, we are going to expose the brutal truth about why the biggest, oldest, and smartest fish wait for you to give up before they strike. I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to realize that your try-hard attitude might actually be the very thing ruining your fishing trips. Have you ever caught a monster while you were busy looking at your phone or eating a sandwich? Tell me about it in the comments, because today we are breaking down exactly why that happens. Let us set the stage here, because every single guy watching this knows exactly what I am talking about. We all grew up hearing the same advice from the older generation. Keep your rod tip up, pay attention, reel with a steady rhythm, never take your eyes off the water. We have been brainwashed to believe that fishing is a game of intense, unbroken focus. So we go out there and we turn into robots. We cast to the same spot, we reel in the exact same way, and we stand perfectly still, gripping that rod like our lives depend on it. We do this for years, convinced that if we just try harder, the fish will eventually reward our hard work. But fishing is not a desk job. The fish do not care about your work ethic. They do not care that you bought a $300 reel or that you woke up at 4 in the morning. When we do the exact same robotic movements hour after hour, we are actually sending out warning signals to every immature fish in the area. We are going to look at the massive shift that happens the moment your brain says, "Screw this, I am out of here." Because in that split second, you accidentally become the deadliest fisherman on the lake. Picture this exact scenario. You have been baking in the sun since dawn. You have thrown every lure in your tackle box. You tried the top water frogs. You dragged heavy jigs through the weeds. You even tied on that weird, bright neon crankbait that you swore you would never use. The water looks completely dead. You can hear the mosquitoes buzzing and your back is starting to ache. You finally look at your buddy or just say out loud to yourself, "Okay, I am done. Just one last cast and I am heading to the truck." You do not even aim. You just whip the rod out there carelessly. You are looking back at your gear, figuring out how to pack the cooler. And then, out of nowhere, it feels like you hooked a moving freight train. The drag screams. It is the biggest bite of the month. You reel it in, completely shocked, wondering how on earth you got so lucky. But the hard truth is that luck had very little to do with it. Your careless attitude in that final moment actually triggered the strike. For decades, fishermen have called this the lucky last cast phenomenon. We treat it like a superstition. We even say the words last cast out loud, almost like a magic spell, hoping the fishing gods will hear us and take pity on our miserable day. But big fish do not operate on magic or pity. A 10-pound bass or a massive pike did not get that huge by making bad decisions or feeling sorry for you. They survived by being extremely cautious and waiting for the absolute perfect moment to expend their energy. When you make that final careless cast, you are breaking the patterns that you have been broadcasting into the water all day long. You are no longer that tense, predictable predator standing on the shore. You have completely changed your presentation without even realizing it, and that sudden change is what the fish have been waiting for. Let us talk about muscle tension. This is something almost nobody thinks about when they are out on the water. When you are focused and trying really hard to catch a fish, your muscles are tight. Your grip on the rod handle is firm. Every time you turn the handle of your reel, you are doing it with a stiff, rigid motion. That tension travels straight down your arms, through the rod, blank, down your fishing line, and directly into your lure. The fish can see that unnatural stiffness. It makes your bait look like a mechanical toy instead of a dying baitfish. But when you give up, your shoulders drop. You loosen your grip. You reel in with a lazy, relaxed motion because you just do not care anymore. Suddenly, that stiff, mechanical lure starts swimming with a natural, fluid, sloppy action. It looks vulnerable. And to a big predator, vulnerable means an easy meal. Then there is the magic of the dead stick. And this happens all the time when you are packing up to leave. You make a cast, but then you get distracted. Maybe you bend down to zip up your tackle bag. Maybe you turn around to take a drink of water or check a text message on your phone. For 10 or 20 seconds, your lure just sits completely motionless on the bottom of the lake or slowly flutters down through the water column. All day long, you have been reeling constantly, never letting the bait pause for more than a second. But now, because you are distracted and ready to leave, you leave the bait alone. Big, lazy fish hate chasing fast-moving prey. They will watch a fast lure go by 100 times and never move a muscle. But a bait that just falls and sits there helplessly, that is an irresistible target. Your distraction accidentally created the perfect pause. We also need to look at how your retrieval speed changes when you are frustrated. Think about how you reel in when you are actively trying to catch a fish. You are probably using a very specific cadence, maybe a twitch, twitch, pause, or a slow, steady roll. You do it over and over like a metronome, but what happens on that final cast? You cast it out and you just want to get it back in so you can go home. You start reeling faster than usual, or maybe you reel erratically because you are annoyed. You are no longer keeping that perfect rhythm. You are pulling the bait erratically through the water. This sudden burst of panicked speed triggers a primal reaction in predatory fish. It simulates a baitfish that has suddenly realized it is in danger and is fleeing for its life. That erratic, careless retrieval is a massive trigger for reaction strikes. Let us talk about breaking the hypnotic pattern. Fish are incredibly sensitive to vibrations in the water. If you stand in the exact same spot for 3 hours, casting every 30 seconds, you are conditioning the fish. You are creating a predictable rhythm of splashes and vibrations. The big, smart fish figure out exactly what you are doing within the first 15 minutes. They learn your pattern and they learn to ignore it. They know the splash is a piece of plastic or metal, not a real meal. But when you get frustrated and decide to leave, you break that rhythm. Maybe you wait 5 minutes between casts while you complain to your buddy. Maybe you cast your bait into a completely different area just to clear a backlash. That break in the repetitive pattern resets the environment. The fish are no longer hypnotized by your constant casting, and a sudden, unexpected movement catches them off guard. Another massive factor is the noise and vibration you make on the bank or in the boat. When fishermen are actively fishing, they are surprisingly loud. They shift their weight from foot to foot. They open and close tackle boxes. They drop pliers on the aluminum deck of the boat. They stomp around looking for different angles. Sound travels through water much faster and louder than it does through the air. You are essentially screaming your presence to every fish within 50 yards. But what happens when you give up? You stop stomping around, you sit down heavily on your cooler, you stop pacing the bank. For a few glorious minutes, you actually get quiet. The water calms down. The pressure wave you were creating disappears. The fish, which had moved out of the area because of your noise, slowly start to move back in. And that is exactly when your last cast hits the water. There is also a very natural alignment between your physical exhaustion and the natural feeding windows of the fish. Most guys hit the water early in the morning, and by midday they are completely worn out. The sun is beating down, the bite has been totally dead for hours, and you are exhausted. You decide to pack it in just as the sun starts to drop and the shadows get a little longer. What you do not realize is that you are quitting exactly when the evening feeding window is just starting to open. The water temperature is cooling down slightly. The bait fish are becoming more active. You throw that lure out one last time while you are packing your bags, right as the dinner bell rings for the big predators. You think it is a miracle, but you just accidentally overlapped your quitting time with their eating time. We really need to dive deep into the psychology of a trophy fish. A big bass, a massive trout, or a giant muskie does not behave like a small, aggressive teenager fish. Little fish will strike at almost anything that moves because they are always hungry and highly competitive. Big fish are entirely different. They are lazy, calculating, and highly suspicious. They will often follow a lure all the way to the boat and just watch it. They might sit under a log and watch you cast 100 times, analyzing your bait. They know something is wrong. They see the thick line, they see the unnatural movement. But when you give up, get sloppy, and let that bait flutter down into the mud, while you look for your keys, you remove all the unnatural signs. The big fish sees a wounded, dying creature making a mistake, and that is when it finally opens its mouth. Let us explore the wild angles of the desperate last cast. When you are focused, you are probably aiming at the obvious spots. The big fallen tree, the edge of the lily pads, the deep drop-off. You are casting perfectly to the spots where the textbooks say the fish should be. But when you are frustrated and ready to leave, you stop caring about precision. You might just sling the lure blindly over your shoulder. You might cast parallel to the bank in shallow water where you never normally cast. And guess what? Sometimes the biggest fish are not in the textbook spots. They are sitting in 2 feet of water behind a tiny rock that you ignored all day long. Your angry, careless, unaimed cast accidentally lands in the exact living room of a monster fish that was hiding away from the obvious structure. Think about the physics of bottom contact when you are not paying attention. If you are fishing a jig or a Texas rigged plastic, you are probably hopping it off the bottom trying to feel every little rock. You keep your line tight. But on that final, depressing cast before you go home, you might cast it out and just let it sit there while you wipe the sweat off your face. The lure sinks naturally, it lands softly, the line goes completely slack. For the first time all day, your bait actually looks perfectly natural, resting in the silt without a tight line pulling it upward. A big fish swims by, sees a crawdad or a baitfish just resting on the bottom, completely unaware of its surroundings. With no tight line to give away the trap, the fish sucks it in. You go to reel in your slack line to leave, and suddenly your rod is bent in half. There is a massive element of surprise that comes with giving up. Fish get accustomed to the trajectory of your casts. If you cast a spinnerbait 40 times past the same dock, the fish know the speed, the depth, and the angle. But let us say you are leaving. You throw a totally random cast at a weird angle across the current instead of with it. The lure approaches the fish from a blind spot. It moves at a different depth because you are not holding your rod tip perfectly high anymore. Your rod is resting on your hip because your arms are tired. This new angle and unexpected approach completely short-circuits the brain of the fish. It does not have time to analyze the lure. It has to make a split-second decision to strike or let the meal get away. The surprise factor forces an instinctive bite. I want you to think about all the rules your grandpa taught you about fishing posture. Keep your rod tip at 11 o'clock. Stand tall, always be ready to set the hook. This is how we are all trained. But holding perfect posture makes your lure movement stiff and predictable. When you are exhausted and about to quit, your posture collapses. Your rod tip drops down toward the water. Because the rod tip is lower, your crankbait dives just a little bit deeper than it has all day. It suddenly starts bouncing off the rocks and digging into the mud, kicking up a trail of silt. All day long, your perfect posture kept the lure running too high in the water column. Your sloppy, defeated posture actually put the bait right into the strike zone where the big fish were hiding. You did not get lucky, you just finally lowered your rod. We have to talk about the famous sandwich bite. This is the exact same phenomenon as the last cast. You fish hard for hours, nothing. You finally decide to take a break. You cast out a live bait or a piece of cut bait, set the rod down against a cooler, and open a sandwich. You take one bite and suddenly the rod is bending over so hard it is about to snap. Why? Because when you were holding the rod, you were unconsciously moving it. Every time you breathed, every time you shifted your weight, you were transmitting micro-vibrations down the line. You were making the bait look nervous and unnatural. The moment you put the rod down to eat, the bait settled perfectly. It stopped vibrating unnaturally. The big fish, which was probably watching it the whole time, finally felt comfortable enough to eat it because human interference was gone. Many professional anglers believe that fish can literally sense your frustration through the line. Now that might sound like crazy talk, but think about the physics of it. When you are tense, anxious, and trying desperately to feel a bite, your hands are vibrating, your heart rate is up, you are twitching. Fish have a lateral line down the side of their bodies that can detect the microscopic displacement of water. They can feel the vibrations of a dying bug on the surface from 20 feet away. Do you really think they cannot feel the unnatural nervous vibrations traveling down your high-tech braided line? When you mentally give up and decide to leave, that nervous energy completely stops. The line goes dead. The unnatural vibrations cease. To the fish, the danger has passed. The area feels safe again, and they attack. This brings us to the ultimate question. If giving up is the secret to catching huge fish, how do you use this to your advantage without actually going home? How do you weaponize the last cast phenomenon? The secret is learning how to fake giving up. You have to train yourself to artificially recreate that sloppy, relaxed, careless attitude right in the middle of your fishing trip. You have to stop treating every cast like a life or death situation. Try casting your lure out, putting the rod down, and literally turning your back on the water for a minute. Look at the trees, drink a soda, let your bait do whatever it wants without you micromanaging every single movement. You will be absolutely amazed at how many fish will hit a lure that is just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You also need to practice the careless retrieve. When you find yourself getting too focused and robotic, forcefully break your own rhythm. Cast out, lower your rod tip all the way to the water, and reel with one hand while looking at the sky. Purposely reel too fast, then just stop entirely and let the bait fall into the weeds. Pretend that you are annoyed. Pretend that you are just trying to clear grass off your hook. Make erratic, chaotic movements that make zero logical sense. The goal is to make your lure look like a bait fish that has lost its mind, not a perfectly programmed submarine. This chaotic, sloppy action is exactly what triggers those violent reaction strikes from giant fish that have ignored your perfect presentations all morning. Another trick to simulate the last cast is to completely change your angle and location for just one throw. If you have been standing on a dock casting straight out into the deep water for an hour, do not just keep doing it. Turn completely around. Cast into the 2 feet of shallow mud right next to the shore where you think no fish could possibly be hiding. Cast behind the boat motor. Cast parallel to the bank right where you have been walking. Big fish are smart, and they often tuck themselves into the most ridiculous, overlooked spots exactly because fishermen never cast there. That careless, stupid cast that you make right before you leave is often the only cast that actually targets the fish hiding in plain sight. You also have to master the art of being quiet. Remember how we talked about the noise you make when you are actively fishing? Try fishing like a ghost. Stand in one spot and do not move your feet for 15 minutes. Do not open a tackle box. Do not talk. Cast your lure and then just freeze. Let the water settle. Let the natural rhythm of the lake return to normal. By mimicking the silence that happens when you pack up your gear and stop trying so hard, you lower the defenses of every fish in the area. The big ones will slowly creep out from under their cover, thinking the annoying human has finally left. Then you hit them with a perfectly timed, lazy retrieve right past their face. The last cast phenomenon is the ultimate proof that in fishing, less is almost always more. We try too hard, we overthink our gear, we overwork our lures, and we stress ourselves out trying to force a fish to bite. The biggest fish you will ever catch are not impressed by your expensive rod or your perfect casting form. They are looking for easy, natural meals that do not behave like they are attached to a tight line. When you finally accept this, your entire mindset changes. You stop fighting the water and start flowing with it. You realize that giving up the need to control every second of the bait is the key to unlocking the best bites of your life. So the next time you are out there and nothing is working, do not wait until it is time to go home. Give up early, get sloppy, and hold on tight. So, what is the big takeaway here? The ultimate turning point in your fishing journey happens when you realize that your intense focus and textbook techniques are often exactly what is scaring the biggest fish away. The magic of the last cast is not magic at all. It is the sudden drop in your muscle tension, the erratic speed of a frustrated retrieve, the dead silence of a paused lure, and the careless angle of a cast you barely aimed. You accidentally give the fish the most natural, unpredictable, and vulnerable presentation of the entire day simply because you stopped trying so hard. This completely changes how you should approach your time on the water. You do not have to wait until you are exhausted and ready to go home to catch a monster. You can artificially create the last cast right in the middle of the afternoon. Just stop. Drop your shoulders. Throw a sloppy, unorganized cast. Let the bait fall to the bottom while you grab a drink and let the fish make the mistake. Thank you so much for watching. If this video made you rethink how you are going to fish this weekend, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. Now I want to hear from you. What is the biggest fish you ever caught right when you were about to give up and leave? Drop your story in the comments below. Let us discuss it, and I will see you guys on the next trip.